And I think I'm officially live. So hopefully everybody is having a good night. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nellie Meadow, and I am doing the restream, going to my North Node Journeyist group. And I am really excited to talk to you tonight about Saturn Return. I am experimenting because I'm not a tech person. I am going to flip to my presentation here shortly. But anyway, I'm really excited to be able to talk about this. I love astrology. I love so many different parts of astrology. Not everybody knows that much about the planets of like Saturn and Pluto and Chiron, and these are the kinds of things I'm into. So I've always, since I've gotten into astrology, been very much into our past lives and how they impact our souls. And I really do feel like the Saturn return is such a key time in our lives. So I wanted to share about that and like share my story. So I cannot see the comments on the screen. However, if I am creative about it, I can go into my YouTube and I can see comments. So, hey, Frederick, appreciate you joining. So I'm going to just kind of leave it off to the side. And yeah, and just chat. And if I can't get to all the comments, just I will, bear with me, and I will get to the comments later and just share. I don't know how long this is going to go because I'm just kind of going with the flow. Because my Gemini stellium could probably talk for hours and hours, or I can condense myself to an hour. We'll see. So I appreciate you watching live. If you're watching a replay, awesome. Love to hear more about your Saturn story, and I'll share some of mine. So I am going to experiment, and I'm going to see if I can get my presentation to come up. So I'm going to be very small, but the presentation will be big, so you'll be able to see what I came up with and just kind of share a little bit about Saturn, the nature of the planet, and also like the whole concept of your return. I feel like really like in the last, I don't know, maybe even more than year or two, I've met so many different people who are like going through their Saturn return. And like we know it's like this tumultuous time. And I feel like those of us who've survived it, and thrived, are here to be able to help other people like better understand and like, kind of live through this time. And I have like, a bunch of coaching clients who are also like in their Saturn return period. And so I feel like I can be like, this wise voice. Not that I did mine completely right. And as I reflect now, I really understand like how I need to take those lessons and all. So yeah, feel free to support with different comments. And hi, movie. I don't know everybody yet, but awesome. Just chime in, ask questions, and so on. I'm going to just share. And yeah, let's do this. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background about myself. So for those of you who are new to me and you don't know me, I'm a mother. I have 3 amazing boys. I am an astrologer, which is my favorite title for myself. I'm also an intuitive life coach, IO psychologist, which is my recent degree, and I'm also a teacher mentor. I think of myself as a person with spiritual gifts, and I feel very fortunate that I have them, that I can connect with spirit. I can help people in ways that maybe the average person can't. And I feel the most fulfilled is when I'm helping others. No matter what I do in my life, if I'm helping and impacting others, that's me living in my purpose. Okay. And I got very much into the North Node. That's actually how I started my community and trying to understand my soul purpose, which has always been my driving force. But like that's not, and I'm not discounting it, but I also started like looking into like South Node and like where was I in past lifetimes. And like, Pluto was like such a very powerful planet for me too, understanding like Pluto's impact on me in terms of like the Pluto opposition that I've been having for a period of time. Did a whole bunch of stuff with Pluto. And then also Saturn, like once I learned about Saturn and like how we have like these karmic contracts, like Saturn's like my planet. So that's why I'm excited to talk about the Saturn return. I did a couple master classes previous months about the nature of Saturn and all that. So I have a few pieces of that in here because I figured some people didn't get that. So I'm going to share about that as well. Because if we're talking about Saturn return, you have to know like what the heck is Saturn all about? It's the planet with the rings, but like what does that actually mean for us? So I'm going to talk about that. I'm a lifelong learner. Like I have a Gemini stellium, and like right now I also have Jupiter. My Jupiter's in Gemini, and which is also the period that we're going through right now. So collectively we're all feeling it, but I feel that all the time, like every day, because that's like my energy. I always have that. So I'm curious, I want to know more, and like I can fall down lots of rabbit holes and learn more things. So got very much into all these things with like our soul and what are these like karmic lessons and twin flames and all these kinds of things people ask about are things that have really gotten my interest, in trying to understand, from my Akashic records, who was I before, and what am I supposed to be doing like in this lifetime? And, what are my Saturn lessons? And if we want to like, basically, if we want to make the best use of our life, it's like really knowing our Saturn. And when we are in this Saturn return period, how do we do it right? So that's what I want to talk about today. So I'm excited for you guys to join. I have some basic facts about Saturn. I'm not going to go into it like in depth, but I do have it in my slideshow. So I figure anybody who loves like, actual content facts, like if you're like, let's say a person who's like an astronomer, right? Or just somebody who's like a lover of science, you might want this stuff. So I put it in here. I, again, am more on the astrology side where I'm curious about like our behavior and how do planets impact our behavior, like in who we are as people, more so than like all the science stuff. But whatever, it's there, and I feel like if that lets somebody connect with me and that's a way to draw them in, that's awesome too. So excited for you guys to join me. And, I am seeing more people come on. Just feel free to like, put things in the comments and I'll try to, get to people as I can. Okay. So what is Saturn about? So this planet, I think, is really truly one of the most awesome planets. And it's a tough one too, because Saturn gives us rules and boundaries and regulations. And actually, in the nature of me, I feel like I have a lot of this Uranus energy where I just want to like do it differently. I'm like the rule breaker. I don't like to follow the rules. And I feel like Saturn is always coming down on me. Like I'm not following what I'm supposed to be following, and Saturn is here. And so I think for me, I need to pay attention because I've made some mistakes, as we all have, right? We're all human. And I feel like because of that, I need to pay better attention. So when Saturn is trying to give me the lesson, whether we're talking about like my natal placement of Saturn, whether we're talking about like, particular Saturn transit, or we're talking about like the Saturn return period, like what happened and like how do I use what happened to like live, a better life and make it easier for my soul, for the next lives. And I don't know if everybody buys into it. I definitely do. And so I feel like, okay, I need, now that I have the knowledge that I have and I have the self-awareness, how can I do better, right? How can I make my life easier? And how can I follow these lessons? And so Saturn is powerful. So Saturn, where it is in your chart is where you might feel inhibited, like where you don't have like this comfort zone. Because again, like you have somebody kind of like, it's like this authority figure, right? Kind of like cracking the whip. Like you have to do it this way. You have to do it like that. So it's like, we're like a little bit gun shy. We get a little bit nervous. And so we could self-sabotage in these areas. And I can definitely say for me, that's for sure true. Saturn is where we could feel suppressed or repressed. Also, this all like figures into Saturn. And where we have Saturn in the particular like house and zodiac in this particular area, everybody's got Saturn somewhere. And so in that area, this is where you're going to grow slowly. And these lessons, you will painstakingly, painfully repeat these lessons over and over again if you do not figure it out. I can tell you, like I've had certain things, like, knowing where my Saturn is, I know that like I didn't pay attention and I, ignored it. And then guess what? It doesn't go away. So it is tough, right? And it's like sometimes like we need to have these lessons and we could feel lost. We could feel broken, like my Saturn is in the 11th house. And so when I relate to my Saturn and I think about like, the 11th house deals with like friendship, it deals with groups, it deals with community, it deals with like structures, innovation, whatever. Yeah, friendship has been a tough thing for me. Female friendships has been very difficult, really since childhood. And like, I think it's like having that Saturn placement there. And so I've had that as an issue. I've written blogs on it. I was going to write a book. I've done research. I've read books on it. So, I mean, like, it's been something where I've concentrated my efforts. It's gotten better, definitely better than like where it was, but I know that's a part of me. And also this concept of like groups and community, like is also very big for me because again, like this is what I've done in my adult life. Like in recent years, I got, very involved, like things locally, for sure, being a part of groups, having the sense of community, but also even like social media wise, like on Facebook. Like I started learning these Facebook groups like 3 years ago, and I literally have grown groups. Like that's become really important for me. And I think this is because of the Saturn, really like emphasizing that this is something I need to do right. And perhaps in previous lifetimes, I haven't done it right. So like doing it right now makes me, this mature soul. I can be this wise sage. I can help other people. And it, gives me the courage. So it's kind of where I live. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for joining. Let me go ahead and go to the next slide. What is Saturn about? So it's the planet of karma. It's the authority. It's the father figure, the great malefic. Okay, so it's like there's going to be, it's kind of like I said, cracking the whip. It's like kind of like coming down on you. And Saturn gives us these lessons. Like we could feel weak in these lessons, but we need to overcome them, right? Just in life, like when we have a challenge, we have to rise to the challenge. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we become like the leaders in our lives, is being able to overcome these challenges. And everybody's got their Saturn, and it has this karmic contract for you. So it's like once you know where your Saturn is, you're able to deal with it. And again, we'll also talk about it for the return, which is my focus, but I want people to kind of like also have an understanding about the nature of your Saturn. So your soul will evolve once you figure it out. But yeah, you're going to have some struggles. That's the nature of life. Anybody who's got an easy life, I applaud you. That just means your soul figured it out in a previous life. But if you're having some challenges now, and I truly fully believe that we all do, we need to like conquer these things so we can have an easier go of it the next time around. And I feel like collectively there's so much ancestral trauma, so much like generational trauma, that we need to be able to figure this out. And I think Saturn helps us like with these lessons. And so let me get into like the heart of it, is when does the Saturn return occur? And so I feel like probably just with the advent of all the YouTube and TikTok and all this, I feel like more people tend to hear about the Saturn return. And so in general, 3 times in your life, if you're lucky enough to make it to the third, around you, like I tend to have a range. It's like usually like between 27 to 31, like you're in that period. It's not always intense that whole time, but like you're in that. So roughly like around 29 and a half, like you have this. And then you embrace, the second Saturn return when you're 58. And then later, if you make it to the third one, and my dad actually was like just in it because he's 88, that is your third one. So these are challenging times of life. There's like literally life-changing things that happen to you, and I actually like to say happen for you, because I feel like if we look at it like a reframe, then it's a positive thing. So yeah, you could have these like shit things happen, right? Like some tough times, but again, what are you supposed to learn from it? So, one thing I heard was like, it's a rite of passage. You're going to experience strife and suffering. Like that's the fact of it. So what lesson are you supposed to learn? How do you get past it? And in general, this is when Saturn is going to return to the same point same point in the sky of when you were born. Okay, that's why I'd say roughly 29 and a half years. And so the Saturn return, and again, it could be different for every person, but roughly around 2.5 years. And it's not like the same level of intensity that whole time. It's not like this massive, like 2.5 year, really, really tough period. Like things will ebb and flow. So like it could be really tough for a period of time, like a good 6 months, and then it'll go retrograde, it'll kind of chill, and then it kind of continues. And then hopefully, once you're past it, you can look back and reflect and see, what are the lessons and how can this help you for the next time, right? Because that's a really big period of time. It's like roughly 29 years in between from the first return to the second and second to the third. So the question is like, what lessons did you learn, and are you reflecting on them, and how do you put yourself in a good point when the next one comes around? Because like 29 years is a really long time. A lot of things happen in our lives in that time. And I'm partway in there, right? I'm 46 years old. And like, as I've been learning all these things with Saturn and doing all this like transformation and all this self-awareness, I started like thinking back to like, okay, what happened in my Saturn return, which I'll be sharing. So yeah, lots of things do happen, and they're supposed to happen. And the question is like, what do you do about these different things that happen? So I didn't put any details on here. I figured I would just kind of talk about this. one of the things I'm supposed to do according to my Saturn, because my Saturn is in Leo, is Leo, that Saturn in Leo doesn't like to be vulnerable and doesn't like to like share all these different things that happen in your life. But the way that you can kind of do better with that energy is like opening up and being your authentic self and being more vulnerable. So, like, I feel like I generally put myself out there. Sometimes I throw myself under the bus and I share different things about myself. And as I was thinking about this return, I was like, yeah, I guess I probably should share some things about my own story, right? Like, and I've been told that like I can be a storyteller. People connect with me when I, tell a different story. I don't just like share the content, but I'll give some background. So yeah, I started thinking about like my Saturn return and where was I in my life like during this period. And so yeah, like when I reflect back to like, where I was when I was 27, 28, 29, and so on, I had some of these big pivotal moments like happen in my life. I had met my husband when I was 26. We were dating, got married at 27. So I was like in that period. And in this period of time, like, struggling to be able to find a house, which took us a long time. It took us like 2.5 years to find a house, which is really, really frustrating, especially when you're a Virgo rising and wants to have everything just done. And I was pregnant at the time, like during this time, so it took me a while to get pregnant, which was another frustrating thing because I wanted to like be pregnant right away. And the universe apparently didn't want that to happen. So it took me 11 months to get pregnant. Very emotionally draining. I was just saying this to somebody tonight, like every month, doing pregnancy tests and finding out you're not pregnant when all you want to do is be pregnant, and you're at that point and you're ready and everything and it's in life has fallen into place. That was really tough. I remember going to my high school reunion, my 10-year reunion, and like everybody there, like, is either pregnant or has a baby they're, talking about or whatever, their babies with a sitter. And I just remember just standing there, like being really upset, like, shoot, I'm still not pregnant. And I've been trying to get pregnant. It's been like 10 months or whatever. And I was like, I remember coming home that night and crying and saying, like, I'm never going to have a baby. Like, this is just like so horrible. And lo and behold, a month later, I actually got pregnant. But it was just like all these different things because that was like so important for me because I really wanted to have a family. And then I had no control. And that was like a really hard thing for me. I had Pluto first house. I always want to have control and I didn't have it. So that was a lot. So I'm like, okay, so like that didn't go on my timetable. And so it finally happened, right? It finally happened and everything was good. My first son was born. That was good. But trying to find the house was like that same house I'm in. Like that was like such a struggle. We couldn't find the house. Till the point I finally just told the universe, I give up. We'll just live in the apartment. So be it. We'll live in the apartment. And I kind of surrendered. And then we had a crazy circumstance too. We were looking for the house. Literally, we were going to buy a house in the same area. My realtor, was helping us. Like we were, looking at the house. We were getting it evaluated. It was like the check that you do, like, right before you sign. So my realtor's car was there. My husband's car was there. My car was there. And we liked the house. It was a little bit expensive for us, but we were like, okay, we're done. We've been looking, we're done. And so that day there was like this massive rain and like something was wrong with the storm drains and like the water ended up like getting so massive that literally, no joke, it flooded our cars. So my realtor, my husband's car, my car all got flooded. I was like, I think 8 months pregnant at the time. And we had obviously no way home. We were in this, potential contract for this house that literally the basement flooded and then our cars flooded. So it was like in my mind, truly like one of the worst like emotional moments ever. And I'm like, great. I'm like, I'm about to have a baby. Neither of us have cars. And I just had got this car that I really love too. Like didn't even have the car a year. My car just got flooded. We have nowhere to live. And I was just like, it was like all this, like, it was like, I felt like, could things get any worse? Right. So like, this was like in my Saturn return period. Luckily it all worked out. We didn't have to, our real estate agent was great. We didn't have to get stuck with the house. That was resolved. We decided, okay, we're going to go live in the apartment and we'll just be fine. In the 1 week's time, we both found a new car and we're like, okay, like all is okay with the world. But that was like a lot of emotional stuff at once, And then, of course, being like pregnant, then my son was born late, like 4 days late. And so I was like really frustrated because like it was summer and it was like super duper hot that summer. And I was like, oh my God, is this child ever going to come out? So it was just like I had no control. And I think probably like looking back, because, you like I was saying, like with the Saturn return, like there's all these different lessons. Um, Control is such a big thing for me. I don't know if it's because of my Pluto conjunct my moon in the first house. It makes me such an intense person, but like I have like maybe in life needed to have this like sense of control, and like I didn't have it. And so I think maybe one of the lessons for me during the Saturn return period was like, okay, maybe Nellie, like you're not always going to have control, and you just need to just deal with it and like take life as it comes. And you know, you will be okay. Like, God, the universe, they're looking out for you. You will be fine. And look, you had this crazy circumstance, but let's reframe it. Let's take a look. Like, you didn't get stuck with this house. Everybody's healthy. And I used to always say to my husband, we're like, we had the craziest things happen in our lives. We had like the circumstances, like if something could go wrong in our lives, it would go wrong. And I feel like this was like this was maybe like this karmic theme that was like for me. It's like if something was bound to happen, like we experienced it. We've always felt like, no, this stuff didn't like happen to other people, or at least we thought, right? At least we thought at the time. We're like, I don't know what's going on. What kind of like literally what karmic. And we didn't even use those terms at the time because I didn't even like really relate all of the spirituality back then. But I'm like, I don't know what I did in the past, like to make somebody upset. But I'm like, I've just had so many different things happen. So it's like kind of if something could go wrong, it did go wrong. And I think like that stuff needed to happen for me to see that I could emotionally handle it. Like I didn't always have to have control. And like everything would work itself out. And that was something that was supposed to be in my path. That was supposed to be a circumstance. So I think like as I take these different lessons, that it's like, okay, like, yeah, you're not always going to have control. And yeah, sometimes shit happens. You're not the only one it happens for. Like the world doesn't revolve around you, Nelly. Like things happen to other people too. And like, how can you use this to your advantage? How can you help other people in a similar circumstance, right? How can you share your story, which is like what I'm doing today, so I think that's important. I think like for me right now, just reflecting at like the point of life I'm at now and some of the things I dealt with and things maybe I should have done differently that I didn't, I can say now, okay, well, I didn't realize it at the time, but like now, like I know better. And now I won't allow myself to be in a certain situation again. And I think like that's important too, because like when we're in a situation, I know a lot of people, you could probably relate to me on this. When you're in a situation, like you don't realize it, right? Like we're in it and we're like kind of stuck. And then we just don't see it, right? Like we have blinders on. We can see when other things are happening to other people. Like it's so much easier, right? I can give everybody advice about what they need to do with their life. I can see clearly when it's for other people. But it's like when it's you and you're the one personally like stuck and like things are not going well, but you don't see it until like later. And then you start to listen to other people. I think that's another lesson for me, that it's like sometimes I need to like remove myself from a situation and try to be like more objective, be mindful and say, okay, like check the facts, what's actually going on, what am I experiencing? And, you know, instead of like kind of blindly going through things, like really taking time to like maybe journal or like meditate it and reflect. I didn't do any of that before. I never journaled. I can tell you that up until like the last few years, didn't do that. I never bought into meditation for the last few years as I became more spiritual. I certainly didn't talk to anybody about anything in my life. I like really kept everything inside, which also didn't serve me very well. I didn't start going to a therapist till like literally a couple years ago. And only because in a sense I was kind of like forced into the situation, which was a good thing, honestly. But like in retrospect, I feel like had I, maybe talked about some of these things I was experiencing and some of the different trauma that I had experienced like in the past, and other things that like maybe started to like hit my mind during the Saturn return period. And if I maybe would have talked about it, like that would have like helped me, but like I didn't. So now in reflection, I see like, okay, like this is a good thing to do. Like you don't want to keep it all inside. You do want to share things with other people. People can give you insight. Nellie, you don't know all the answers. You think you know all the answers, but you really don't. So it's like kind of like the self-talk with myself. So yeah, I mean, I probably honestly haven't sat and analyzed everything from the Saturn return. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. But there probably are some other things that like happened. It's a really big chunk of time, right? We're talking about like 2.5, 3 years of your life where all these like pivotal moments happen. And then it's like, okay, well, how do these relate to other things that happen in your life? Like are certain things happening here that, you're getting triggered by something that happened in the past. So I think it's like an interesting like reflection period, to really like sit down and think like, okay, where am I at now in my life? What lessons have I learned? What things happened to me back then? What was I supposed to have learned? So this way, by the time you get to the second one, when you're, roughly 58, that this is more of like a wisdom period. They say the first Saturn return, and actually I'll flip to the next slide because I think I'm starting to get into some of the content more. The first one is like definitely more like wake up, like you're having some hard things happen to you, and like what are you going to do about it? How is it going to help shape you so that you can have this better life? When you get to the second one, which is like the wise period, which I'm looking forward to that one. I'm hoping that's not going to shake up my life in a crazy way, because I honestly feel like I kind of live a Saturn return every day of my life. But I'm hoping that by the time I get to the second one, I can navigate so much better. And like that's I think why I like this term navigate, because like we're going to have some tough waters, right? We're going to have some struggles, but it's like, how are we going to make our way through? So there's probably more stuff I could talk about with mine. I think that's I think good for like for this particular period of time. And there's probably more things that will come up, because once you start talking about things and thinking about things and processing things, other things come up. But I think the gist of it is that if nothing else that you get from tonight, I want you really to kind of like reflect on your time. Like if you're a person who's in it right now, like you're in a golden opportunity. Like I wish in a way I could go back in time, and like not that I would do it differently per se, but like really pay attention more and like act better, from that period of time, which I know I didn't. But it's like if you're in this opportunity right now, like if you're in this golden period, you're in your late 20s, early 30s, like see what you can do. Like if you're not, it's not too late. And it's like, if you're in this period of like where I am in this reflection time, like really sit down and think about that time, like make a timeline and figure out like, okay, what were these, key things that happened to me in this time? How did I deal with it? How could I have dealt with it better? Is there like a similar theme that's coming up for me in my life now? And I mean, I will analyze to death. Virgo rising, like I will analyze things to death. Sometimes I don't analyze my life to death because I don't want to revisit these things, but like I know I need to. So it's like we all need to do more work if we want to live in this highest vibration. I was talking about this with a friend of mine today. Like if we want to live in the highest vibration, then we need to be able to do it, right? Like we have to like deal with the like uncomfortable conversations with our own selves. It's like, taking the time to like sit and think about like, okay, I had this tough period of time, but like I'm here, I'm still standing, right? I'm still doing the best I can. And so which things maybe did I not get so right that I could do better, when a similar situation comes along, so I don't repeat the lesson, right? Because like we're going to keep getting the same lessons, the same type of people are going to come into our lives until like we figure it out. The universe is going to keep providing these for us, nature of how things work. um, hey, Samira, thank you for joining. Hey, Tracy. I'm just going on and on and on. So thank you guys for joining. Feel free to share in your thoughts. But yeah, I've definitely learned a lot. I know that there is more learning that will happen. So I'm here. Like I'm going to embrace it. Whereas I probably didn't before. So I'm gonna grab a drink because you know what? I could talk for hours. And I probably should take a little break. I've definitely been talking for hours even before tonight. Nature of being a teacher, because I'm always talking. So this time, like I said, it's going to bring on massive change. And it's not going to be like intense like at first, but like it'll be kind of quiet, it'll be kind of chill. It's going to like keep growing and growing, and it's going to make our character who we are today. And really, the whole point is, again, we could beat ourselves up over what we didn't do the way we wanted to do, But again, like that doesn't serve us. Like we have to like be our own advocates. Like we have to be compassionate with ourselves. I say this because I know I'm not always with myself. I hold myself to like a crazy high standard, which isn't reasonable. And then I expect so much of myself. And then, I give everybody else slack, and I know I have to be better. And that's maybe probably like my lesson too. Like, hey, give yourself credit. You lived a lot of stuff. You've lived a lot of trauma. Don't compare traumas with somebody else and say, hey, like, oh, they had it harder, or oh yeah, it's no big deal because I can just get through it. It's also like about like, accepting what happened, and giving yourself that credit, giving yourself that validation, like, hey, I did it. I can do harder things, and so when another situation comes up, you reflect on, okay, I did this hard thing and now I can get through this next chapter. And if I can't do it myself, I'm going to reach out to somebody else, right? Like we can't do this life alone. My South Node Aries warrior wants to do it all alone. She wants to just be the Wonder Woman, right? My Wonder Woman behind me, if you can see it. She wants to do it all herself, but like, I know I can't. I know I have to get help, which is very painful for me. But I think that's also one of my lessons, is that I need to be able to accept the help, which I'm North Node Libra. So I do need to be in collaboration and connection with others, because I am not going to like be the success that I know I can be if I try to do it by myself, because you need to have a team. So I think all of that is so key. And like I said, inventory what happened, like journal it, right? Like think about it, like sit down and like have this conversation with yourself, so that way you're better prepared for the next run. I'm probably being a little repetitive, but as a teacher, I know that like you have to say things over and over again to like get things in people's heads, because it's easy to miss it. And when this is important, like you want to say it a few times. So if I'm being repetitive, part of it's for a reason. So yeah, we do it right. We can be like in better shape. And so, yes, could we beat ourselves up and say, I wish I would have realized this, years ago? Well, you didn't, and maybe you weren't supposed to, and maybe it's the time is now. So what can you do going forward? Giving yourself the credit. And so, yeah, like this is a time where you would have had these setbacks, and like you had to work really, really hard to get to where you are now. And I think that's important. And this wake up call, is this big challenge. Like, can you rise to the challenge? No good leader is a leader because they had it easy. That's not what makes you a good leader. And leadership is such a big concept for me. We all need to be leaders in our lives, leaders in your house, leaders just in your own like relationship with yourself, a leader in your company, whatever you do, like we are leaders. And like I kind of feel like there's two things. Are you going to be a leader? Or are you going to be a follower? And there's nothing wrong with being a follower, but I feel like if you have this energy to lead, then you need to embrace these lessons and say like, hey, I've done this, and now as a result, here's where I'm at. And then you're like better equipped, to be able to help others. Because realistically, like we look up to people, our role models are people who've gone through like the tough times, right? Like we respect people who like to me, it's like when I like, hear one of my influencers, I love listening to some of these people, and I hear like, they had all these troubling things happen. Like I respect them. I feel like even more connected to them because of what they live. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to connect with somebody who had a cake life and everything was easy and everything was given to them. Like that's not going to be as relatable to me. I'm like, okay, well, what have you done? What challenging things have you done? Are you a person I can turn to? Can I count on? Can I get advice from? So I think it's like looking at it this way, like what's the reframe for like what you've experienced? So I think that's important. And like I said, that it's just a wake up call period, and you're going to grow. And that's the thing. Now, if you want to get deeper, like if you want to take a look at the astrology, when you're looking back to it, think about like, okay, where is your Saturn in general? So where does your Saturn fall natally in terms of its house and its zodiac? And then also the aspects. That's where I'm talking about going deeper. So like aspects to the major planets. So our personal planets. Okay, so our luminaries, the sun and the moon, and Mercury and Mars. Like, so those are some of the big ones. Is it connected? So like for me personally, when I'm thinking about Saturn, so my Saturn is right next to my Mercury. It's conjunct. It's I think like 3 degrees apart. So it's like, it's really close. So that's something that I need to deal with. and I have to kind of research some of my other ones too, like with Saturn and its connections to the other ones. But I know my Saturn and Mercury is something I definitely need to think about. And then also, like when Saturn is, moving around, where is Saturn in the sky, like right now? In what house am I feeling it? So, yes, even though natally I have Saturn in my 11th house, but like Saturn could be like, I have a lot of transits right now in my 7th, 8th, and 9th houses. So I know like that's where I'm feeling things. So, I should probably pay attention to see like, okay, where is Saturn for me now? And where is it placing like these boundaries, these rules? Where am I having like these like karmic lessons? So it's about paying attention to the now. Yes, it's also reflecting back on that period, but also we're learning lessons all the time for like things that are happening in real time. And those things are also shaping us, as we're heading into, the next return. And so this will be a time you're going to get catapulted into new things. How do we learn and grow? Not by being stagnant and doing the same stuff. We learn and grow from doing these new things, these hard things, right? These things that are like this uncomfortable action. Like that's what it's about, So, and I personally catapult myself into it, and I didn't for so long. And then I don't know what it was, where it was just like one day I was kind of like thinking about my life, and I was like, okay, do I want to be like retired nursing home age and just like thinking back to like I wish I would have done something else with myself. And so I feel like that was kind of the impetus for me to be like, okay, like what have you done? Yes, you've made some accomplishments. I'm not going to discount the things I did before, like the last 3 years, but I just thought to myself, like, okay, what could I be doing differently? And then reflecting on like, what did I do in that time? What could I have done more? And it's like, it's really like thinking about pushing yourself to do more. I wasn't like necessarily focusing on like that sense of community. Like that's really important to me now. I wasn't reaching out for help, and I should have been. I kept thinking like all these bad things were happening to me, and like, feeling, very upset about it. But now I see like, okay, Nellie, you live in this chaos state. One of my gene keys is like related to chaos. So I know I'm a person that's going to have chaos come up more so than the average person. So that is what I chose in this lifetime. So as a result, I need to embrace that and accept like, hey, you are going to do well in spite of that. That chaos is going to make you more creative, more innovative, make you the leader that you are, and then, just keep going forward. So, it's really just like I said, it's about like being responsible, being accountable, and seeing the truth, like not being in those blinders. It's like seeing things for the reality of that. And you're not going to have attachments, which is hard because I think a lot of us, especially on Libra moon has issues of codependency. And so that has been like a reoccurring theme for me too. So either people become codependent on me or I become codependent. It could be friendships, it could be romantic relationships, it could be work relationships. It's like an instant thing that just happens for me where it's like feel this connection where somehow the souls are related and there's like this automatic attachment, and that isn't always healthy. So it's like it's in this lessons, I think, especially, and I'm not saying everybody has this, but I think for some people it's like we don't need to have all these emotional attachments or even attachments to stuff, right? People get so attached to stuff that's like they can't leave, or attachment to like concept or big beliefs. Lose those attachments. I feel like all these like things like hold us back, and if you can do it, you will get these rewards. Those same lessons won't keep coming up, and you'll be able to like live in this life that you really want, and be empowered. This is what I said here: step into your power. I'm just taking a look real quick here on comments. Yeah, Frederick says he's got Saturn opposite Juno, and he got married at 29. That marriage ended in a divorce. I'm sorry. 5 years later, I needed to take things slow, which he didn't. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because that's definitely like an issue, which is what I'm going through right now. And it's like, in reflection of where I was at then, like that was not going to be the point of divorce. But in thinking about stuff I experienced in my marriage and thinking about things I had in like previous relationships, I was like living the same cycle. I was like literally like with the same type of person that really didn't serve me. And God, I wish I would have realized it back then, right? It's like sometimes I don't know, like in hindsight, like why did it take so long? But I think it's like we're in it, we're not realizing it, or we want to like make it go away and all of this. And and it's not gonna go away. Like it's still here. The universe is saying, like, no, you're gonna figure it out. If we have to like make it so challenging for you, you're gonna figure it out. And so yeah, if you could figure it out during the Saturn return period, that's easier. But like if you're like me, sometimes you learn the lessons the super hard way, and it takes a period of time. So yeah, Project, I'm sorry that was your reality. It's like the reality I'm living, except just lots of years later. So yeah, but I think you know what? It's like for me, it's like I get it now, and like I, it's like I truly get it, and so now it's like I know better, and I'm that much more cautious and that much more aware to make sure that I do not put myself in that situation again. So I'm very cognizant. Could I make a mistake again? It's possible, but I'm definitely going to, like, my Virgo rising, like my Virgo is going to be like totally amped up, where I'm going to be paying a lot more attention and preventing myself from these same things, and really like paying attention, because I want to have a better experience in the next one. Um, and I think, yeah, it's definitely got me more focused, more tenacious, more resilient. I am resilient. I've dealt with a lot of bullshit. Not everything I've shared with the whole world, but I have. And a lot of people have too. But it's like, okay, it's like, how can you bounce back, and how can you put yourself in a better place? And you could be at a crossroads. I really feel like a lot of people, they're like at this like crossroads, like, do I go to this path or that? And then you might fear making that life altering decision. I literally feel like, I don't know, I mean, I'm not like in a Saturn return right now, but I feel like this eclipse energy for me, because I have like the North Node Libra, so I'm on like the Libra Aries axis. That eclipse period for me, the one that started in October, whatever, like not more than 6 months ago, but the October 1, 2023, then everything that happened in March, April, like this second, like really powerful eclipse period, I feel like to me was almost like a Saturn return. And it's like a really like a huge wake up call. So I feel like it's like, okay, Nelly, you messed up your Saturn return the first time where you didn't get the lesson. So this is your sort of intermediate one where you're going to be figuring things out. So I kind of feel like this period of time, like over the last year or even two, has been kind of like that, where it's like big things thrown at me, and like, how can I handle them? Am I finally going to deal with these things? And like, stepping up for it. And I like this point that this is a time for guidance, and you could have tunnel vision. Like, you have to be open to listening to people, like people who you feel safe with, people who you trust, people who you respect, people who are like for your greatest good. Because I think if you don't listen to anybody's guidance, if you're going to be stubborn, and I am stubborn, but if you're going to be stubborn, like things are not going to go your way. Like, you need to be open and get the guidance. At least be open to listening, right? At least be open to listening. But when you start to hear the same repeated message, right? And then you can start to think like, okay, all these people can't be interpreting the situation wrong. Maybe I'm the one who isn't seeing it, right? Like, what's the common denominator? What's the problem? And so I think that's important too, is just seeing that. Because I mean, even recently for me, like people have been telling me some of the same information, and I'm highly resistant to listening. It's in the back of my mind. Like, I'm not like totally against what's being said to me, but I still in my mind like kind of want to do things my way. And again, that could backfire, right? But it's like, it's just being open. So I think it's the first thing is like being open to guidance, whether you're talking to like a spiritual mentor, a counselor, a therapist, a friend, whoever in your life. Reach out to other people, especially like also being friends with people who are in the same time period of what you're going through. I think that helps as well. And yeah, this is a crisis time, and you will have to rebuild your life. But again, it's like no one's immune to this. It's not like some people just skip their Saturn return. Like, you're going to experience it. Is it going to be at the same level of somebody else? Maybe not. But like, you're given the things that you can truly like handle and that you're going to learn from. So I think it's like looking at it from that lens is really powerful. And you're going to get a new value system. And so this will help your foundation. And I think, like I said, like there's all these different statements I made here, I think are really good things to reflect on, even for myself, because I really feel like I need to think about these things too. Like, what was I living then? What am I living now? And like, where do I want to be? And like, we change our minds about things, and that's okay. Like, we might be like, okay, this is where I was at that time, and that was my belief system. But then different things happen. We have different experiences, and then we develop this wisdom, and we now know, like, okay, that maybe that wasn't so right. Maybe I should do it differently, and see and like learn from maybe even other people's experiences, or just learning from the hard lessons. Because I feel like unless that lesson is really hard, it might not like come through. Like, you might not really realize it. So sometimes it has to be painful, to really like get the message across. And again, no one is immune from it. Everybody has something happen, and the question is like, what do you do about it? And like, how does it make you better? um, Let me see, Frederick, you said, in hindsight, I should have known astrology back then, but without that divorce, I couldn't have become an astrologer. I feel you. I feel you. Yeah, it makes sense. It's like, we have to have these things happen so other things can happen, right? Like, there's the, yes, I mean, not everything is predetermined, right? We do have free will, but there's certain things that are supposed to happen in our lives, and you can't escape them. You cannot escape fate. There's certain things that are just predestined in this life. Your soul came here, it wants this experience, you're going to get that experience, and you can just choose, how to go about it. But like, if something is meant to be, it's meant to be. So I think that's key, like, to remember. So yeah, reflect back on where you sabotaged yourself. Like, how can you do better? How can you do different? And the universe is going to bring these lessons to your soul, kind of like it or not. You're going to have to deal with these lessons, and you're going to like have these concrete lessons on death and rebirth. And like, this is personally interesting for me, because like Pluto, I think, is so key for me. And Pluto's lessons are more like on the psychological front, whereas the stuff that happens with Saturn, these are like physical, tangible things, right? Because Saturn, think of Saturn as like Capricorn energy. And so Capricorn is like physical, tangible, grounded, like real stuff. So it's like these real things are happening. My car got flooded. That house basement got flooded. I was physically 8 months pregnant. It took me a long time to get pregnant. I had gotten married in that time. We were stuck in this apartment complex for 2.5 years, which I hated. Didn't want to even live there one day. But it was just like all these different things. Like, these were physical things that happened to me, in that time, and then finally like moving here. I had to start all over. Like, moving to the house was great. Finally, I wanted that. But then it was like, okay, I was in a new community. I didn't like know people. I was trying to get my tutoring company going. I didn't know like a soul out here. I lost my whole client base. I had to literally start all over again, which was frustrating both for me, like financially, and also just like my, mental health, and like my own like self-worth. Like, okay, why am I not finding clients? Like, what do I have to do? I'm not going back to work. I became a stay-at-home mom, which I loved. I wanted to do that. But that was like also like a shift. I had, like, okay, I didn't have the friends I had before. I didn't have the life I had before. There was like all this like new learning, and having like to start all over again. And that was like what I was living, and then things started to transpire, and it was, like different things. I learned to cook. Like, I didn't cook that many things before, but I had this time. So I'm like, okay, what could I be doing differently with myself? I'm home with my son all day. So what are we going to do with ourselves? So it's just, he used to watch cooking shows with me, and I used to experiment. But it was like this time of like, true like rebirth. Like, who am I as a person? And like, who was I before? And like, who am I now? And so I feel like this is like really important at that time. And we create this whole new world for ourselves, right? So it's like this whole new outer world. What do we want the world to look like? Our own world. And like, this impacts us, like I said, in all the different areas. So in our career, like in our love, and it could be like, a new romantic relationship, or, romantic relationship dissolving, having children. It could be the death of, a loved one. It could be the death of a parent, the death of a grandparent, like, this starts to happen like in this time, like, losing a person who's pivotal to you. The rebirth of yourself, like beliefs. I mean, like our belief system, like let's say you're a person who was like, you grew up like very religious, And then, time passed and whatever, you realize, no, I don't think I believe those ideas, like that I was living all this time. And I think I'm not going to be that religious, or maybe I'm going to switch to a different religion, or maybe, I'm going to have a whole different belief system, or I'm going to become spiritual, which is more like, in some ways for some people, like, against religion. I don't think it is for me personally, because I have both in my life, but I think like this is like powerful period of time where people start questioning and like who they are and like what they truly believe, and like what's your purpose. Like, you start to think like, okay, like, I'm now been an adult for a period of time, and like, what do I really believe about the world? Like, why am I here? Start asking those questions, like, what's the meaning of life? And like, all this like existential type of, it's like, I'm not saying it's like necessarily an existential crisis, but I think it's like a period of time where we're trying to figure this stuff out. And like, and I think it hits us like, right, because we're multifaceted people. When something happens to us, it impacts us completely. We can't just compartmentalize and say, okay, well, this just thing hit my personal life, it didn't happen, it didn't, impact me professionally. But no, when you're going through your Saturn return, like, it's impacting you everywhere, like all around. Even if you think it's not, it is. And like, we don't always tap into our subconscious, but there's stuff that's there, there's stuff that's repressed. It might come up in dreams, and like, people don't always pay attention to it in dreams, but like, it comes up as well. So lots of lessons. Now, I don't want anybody to think doom and gloom, because this is not what it's about. This is all about like being successful with going through this difficult period. So I talk to people all the time, and like, I've had, whether it's clients, friends, etc., I seem to always be talking to people, in this time, or younger people even approaching this time. But people want to know, like, okay, like, what do I do? Like, how do I best navigate this period? So like, what are some different tips? So like, I came up with some different ideas. It's not only these kinds of things, but there's more things you can do, but I wanted to try to keep it simple. So I came up with 5 different things. Number 5 in numerology is all about change. So I thought, okay, let's keep it simple. 5 different things about what you should do. Number 1, like I started off talking tonight, being honest, being authentic, about everything. So being honest with yourself about all these different wounds that you experienced, and sharing it with others. So that's important. Having a step-by-step plan to change and commit to what you need to do. Okay, so you want to be able to do that. So like Virgo style, make a list, figure things out, like what happened, like literally timeline, what happened, and like reflect on it. What did you do? What could you have done? What do you see for yourself going forward? And then number 3, ask if whatever you're going through, and like whatever you're trying to plan for, like what you're doing right now at this particular moment in time, like inventory your life, inventory your behavior. Like, what are you experiencing? Does this benefit your higher self? Are you sabotaging yourself, or are you doing things that are in your own best interest? We do things a lot of times for other people's best interest. We don't often think about that for ourselves. So what are you doing right now to make it better, for your own self? So I think that's a good one to think about too. And 4 is like, it's just an important realization. It's not something you have to do, but I think it's just like an understanding, like, okay, the universe is shaping you now. I think the universe is always shaping us. Like, we're always changing, and like, we're developing. Like, we're never done, right? We're never done growing. And so we're in this period of time where we're becoming the best versions of ourselves, like in that highest vibration. And just accept it, that this is who you are. And then you will, a year from now, you'll look back and be like, hey, I went through some difficult things, but this is where I am now as a result, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and so on. And 5, I think it's like being realistic. Don't be gullible. Realize you are better now, right? And also just like giving yourself that self-compassion and that grace and that acceptance for like what you lived and where you like want to be. I think that's the big thing. So think about like, think about the past, present, future, kind of like how a tarot spread is, right? And so like reflect on where it was, where you at present moment, and then what would you like to see going forward into the future. And I think like that's helpful. And then, yeah, the last part here, I'm just making sure if I missed any comments or not. I appreciate you guys hanging with me. Is I love helping people. That's the nature of me. Anybody who knows me knows that. Like, you talk to me, I'm going to like try to connect you with somebody. I'm going to try to give you a resource. I truly want to be helpful because that's like my mission. And I know, like, I've experienced some different things and people can learn from that, just like people can learn from you with the things that you've experienced. So one of like my favorite things, if I could do it all day long, I would do astrology and I would coach people because that's what I truly love. And I'm hoping someday in the future that could be my reality. So in bringing that up, like, I'm here. So if you feel like I could be a benefit to you and I could, journey with you, and be on your side and listen and guide, whatever you need, I can help. Like, I'm intuitive. I tailor things to each person. I've done this as a tutor for 25 years. I've done this with my coaching clients for the last few years. Like, I get to know the person and what you need and be able to help you. So whether it's like looking at your chart and analyzing different things in your chart. So like, I see I have a typo. Oh my gosh, my Virgo didn't catch that. We can, deep dive your chart. We can take a look at the planets, the house placements. We could take a look at the aspects and like, what are the transits? Like, what's going on in real time? Like, we could do things, based on astrology. I mean, we could also coach and we can talk about spirituality, mental health. Like, I have a lot of background in that. I thought about becoming a therapist. I've learned, DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. So I've done so much of that. And yes, even when we talk about like Saturn, we could connect it with tarot because there's archetypes, right? And all of that comes into play. So I'd love to be able to do that. And I'm offering like a half price program for people this summer. So if you are interested in working with me, usually I do like either 8-hour, 12-hour packages. Reach out to me, please. Let me help you. Like, I want to be of help because that makes me feel good about myself and I feel fulfilled, that I'm doing that. And my teaching job, I will be free as of Monday. It's my last day and I can finally have more free time. And I would love to be able to do more astrology and help people like with their journey. So I do things for the Saturn Return. I have a 3-part series. I really, sometimes it takes more than that, but like, if that's something that you feel like would be helpful for you based on listening to me today, let's do it. I also love to do a solar return. So like, when it's your birthday, I like to be able to do that. And yeah, so just, reach out to me. If you're not in my Facebook group, feel free to join. North Node Journeyist. I'm also on Facebook with North Node and Coaching. I have my coaching page, personal profile. I don't know if I put my email on there. It's nmeadow@gmail.com. Most people know how to get a hold of me. Like, I started putting things out on YouTube too. So I hope to be able to hear from more people. And yeah, if I missed anything in the comments, I will reflect back. But I think this was a good conversation. I'm hoping you guys have learned. Let me see if I get this to get me back. Oh, yay. Okay. I'm learning the technology. Saturn is in my 11th house and makes my technology kind of problematic, but I've learned to just like embrace it. Whatever way I have to like be able to impart information, I want to be able to do that. So glad I could be able to talk to everybody today and got to share a little bit more about myself, which I think helps my own Saturn journey. I look forward to hearing about your journey. So yeah, so let's be in touch. Let me know what you think. I will be posting the slide deck in my group and also be sharing this to the North Node Journeyist group, so you'll be able to see it as well. So feel free to share it with others because everybody needs to be able to navigate this time and also be better for it for the future. So everybody have a good night. Have a beautiful start this summer. I will be doing future master classes. I don't know the next one yet, but I'm thinking about different ideas. I might do something with Uranus. That's another planet I'm interested in. So I will do that then. So everybody have a good evening. Thank you again for joining.